You just receive your table, and I'm going to show you very quickly how you can set it up by yourself without a problem. So the table is wrapped in a hard cardboard, and you can take it out by yourself. I'm going to take that big things out. Now you have your table, and what you're going to do is just now you're going to basically cut off the plastic. So the table comes with many elements with it. Here you have the roll, the auxiliary rolls. You have the stiff metal piece to fix the auxiliary roll just beside. This is basically the leg support when you're supine on the table. Right here, you have all the bracket that goes for the decompression unit. Here, that's the stands coming for the touch screen. Here is your foot pedal. And on the back, but you cannot see it ready here, it's the whole screen is right there. So pretty much those are the elements of the table that you will have to take apart each one of them, put them away to leave your table by itself and to be able to set it up properly and quickly. Okay, let's open together the goodies. So here we have the rolls. Those rolls will be the auxiliary rolls. You should have two. We have those metal parts, which are quite heavy. So here we can cut without a problem. We should have 4 metal pieces. We have then the leg bolster. And this will go under the patient's leg as he lies supine and when we have a decompression session. We have another little bolster here. Here we have our touch screen that will go beside the table. We have here a section which is basically the bracket for the lumbar. So we're going to place it just right here, and it will go this way around the patient's pelvis. Then we have the thoracic brace that will go around the lower thoracic. We have here already set up on the table the system for the cervical traction. Here, we call that the roll. That will be the underarm auxiliary roll. And they are in 2 parts. One part will go right here. The second part, slide in it, and then finally you will stick the roll in it. And that will go, you have 2 of them. And inside you will find the foot pedal. So let's see what we have in that box. So we have the foot pedal with an up and down. And with the foot pedal to command here, we also have this that will allow us basically to bend the tail section of the table. We have here a lumbar bracket. It's adjustable to the patient's side. Just press to release it, and it goes right in it on both sides. And what it will do, those are the different parts coming with your table. So first we're going to put the power in, and that's pretty easy. That's the one right in the middle. Second, we're going to put the screen in. If you don't know where to hook up, you look how many little holes you've got in it. You've got 5 holes, and the 5 holes goes right in front, here or in the back. There you go. We didn't mess up. So the screen is going to hook up on the hole on the back. And here we look at the base, and we have a 4 little pin. So the 4 little pin is right on the front. And that's it. And we can twist the ring around it to fix it. That will be all up and down. And finally, we have the drop foot command. So the slip in will be right here. So we have elevation hooked up, the drop hooked up, and the screen hooked up. You have 2 safety buttons here on that table. One, which is used when the patient is supine, facing up, and he can hold it in his hands. Otherwise, we let it stay right here. And this one is when the patient is prone, facing down. You press it to stop everything, press down, and to release, twist it. Press down, twist it. Press down, twist it. Every part of that table can be moved with only 1 finger. So unlock the port, and you can move it with 1 finger. Lateral flexion of the headpiece, same thing, 1 finger touch on. When treating a patient supine, you want to have the hand rest up so the patient can relax. And for that, you're going to just press on the bottom of the hand rest and gently raise it up. And you do that on both sides. Okay, the headpiece can go up and down. The button down is locked. Up, we can bring it up. Lock it again. The patient can use those handles in decompression technique, and you can set up the distance of the handle from the table to adapt it to the patient's length, arm length. So you unlock this segment, and 1 finger pull it out, lock it, then we have it strong. You have a magnetic paper roll here, so you open that up, pull your paper, drop it, it's a magnet, and here you cut down your paper, extremely easy. You also have a flexion of the table. Take the handle, press it, move it down, or move it up. The density of the foam make it less absorbing. Anti-slippery, make it more secure to the patient. This is a pelvic brace, the section that will go on the patient's pelvis. You have an L-shaped metal part, and you recognize the pelvic section by the fact that it can be stretched because people are different lengths. So I'm going to go just right here and hook it up, and the black part will go on the top, and the patient will lay on his back or on his stomach on that section. So this is a thoracic section, the one that will go on the upper part of the thorax of the patient. And this too has an L-shaped bracket on it, and you will place the L-shaped bracket just under a plate that you have at the section right here. And you will lay down flat. For the patient, he will be able to lay down either prone or supine, and the traction will happen between those two segments. As the patient is supine, in traction, axial traction or flexion distraction, we're going to give her that, and she will be able to press on that button and turn off the table. So can you hold that on? And basically it will stop the table. So we have this function, and the other function is going to be under the table, the red button on the right side. So you're going to find here on the right side a red button that you will press down if you have any type of pain as we perform that. So I'm going to lower that for you. Press down, stops. Twist it, open again. You have a self-adjusting auto lock. If you cannot lock because the bracket just hit the table, you're going to just pull it, bring it down, and then you lock it. So pull it, move it away, and then you can lock it. Open it up again. Very, very smooth mechanism. One finger will push down the foot piece. Excellent engineering. The ankle straps are thick, very, very comfortable to the patient. They can hang down, or you can basically wrap them around the table, but when you don't use them. But how it works, very easy. Once you have the patient on, his ankle will go in it. You wrap it up this way, and you put the strap on it, and it holds the patient down. So it will be either for a treatment prone or for a treatment supine, but you can have a traction applied directly on the ankle and affecting the hip. There is a high variation in the patient sizes, especially in the States. You can have somebody extremely thin and somebody much, much bigger. So a table, a thoracic port like that fits me. If we have somebody bigger, we're going to need something much longer that will become really inconvenient on a thinner person. So you have with your table those extensions that works well, and basically you place them on it, and just like that, and suddenly this becomes extremely big and will fit pretty much everybody. So those extensions comes with your package, and they allow you to treat a thin patient comfortably and a really, really big patient also comfortably. Okay, with this table comes a part which is quite interesting. It's basically a smaller belt in width, and in it you have, and I'm going to show you here, you have a rubber ring that will go directly on the spinous of the lumbar, and it will press it down. So it's interesting to use for retrolisthesis of the lumbar, and very often in some case where you have a stenosing from a retrolisthesis in the lumbar. So how do you apply it? You apply it usually mostly with a flexion type of motion of that table. So you're going to make sure initially that this screw is completely up, okay, to allow you to press then on the spine. When you have done that, you're going to hook up on each side, and then you're going to, maintaining this straight, going to push down the button, tighten it up on both sides. Good. When it's firmly tight, you're going to increase the tension at that level, So it has a nice pressure on the lumbar, a smooth pressure on the lumbar, and there is not much gliding to go with it. And it's quite effective. You have to be careful and monitor the patient at the beginning of the session. And we go. How does it feel? Good. So we have attached here and here. We have put an attachment on the ankle. And basically here we have not put any actual traction, but we can put a bit of actual traction initially and then bring the flexion. So very often what we will do, we put the traction to tense the body, then we set up our thing, and finally we go in flexion. Lateral flexion is used with segmental extension, segmental lateralization, axial traction, straight flexion, and as you can see, one finger is enough to move the table with the patient on. So it's very, very smooth type of articulated table. So we have 3 ways to elevate or lower that table. One way is basically one command that will bring the table all the way up or all the way down. For that, I just select elevation and I go up, and it will go all the way up. So that's how it works. So let's get it up. Now, for the same function, but a little bit different, I can use the foot pedal. The foot pedal will work, and as soon as I remove my foot from the pedal, it will stop the table. And finally, when I'm working with the patient, I have a third ability to use the up and down, that little button here, and same thing, if I press on it, it goes up. If I press it on the other one, it goes down. So the up and down functions is very redundant. I have one control on the screen for full up or full down, one control on the foot, and one control on the table to monitor with more precision where I want the table to stop. Okay, on top of the screen, I have 3 functions. Here I have the traction, here I have the flexion, and here I have the elevation, and finally I have the drop. I'm going to want to put the patient on traction, and for that I'm going to select a certain amount of cycle. So let's start to go with the cycle, and here I'm going to increase the cycle to 5. And I'm going to increase, as I select my traction, I'm going to put some level of traction to be the maximum. You can see the screen here as it goes up. All right, so that's my traction. Then I just need to start on start, and my table is going to go in full traction, linear traction, without flexion. Now I'm going to add to that motion some flexion. So let's start here. Let's stop the machine. We're going to stop it. And I'm going to go in flexion. And I'm going to add some flexion, and we're going to see it here. So we're going to see it, to put it high so you can see it well. And then I start. And you're going to have flexion. First distraction, then flexion. So I could have started with only flexion or only distraction. Now what I want to do, I want a certain level of axial traction, but in the same time flexion. So I'm going to lock the traction, and I'm going to put it in flexion. So now, when the table will be at the set traction that I set up on my screen, the flexion will start, but the traction will not change. And I can do the same thing with the flexion. So I stop here. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to basically rule out. So I'm going to put here, stop. So the table is going to go in flexion. And once in flexion, it's going to distract, but it's always going to stay at the same level of flexion. As you can see. So same amount of flexion, but only actual distraction is changing right now. Very high flexibility to treat almost any condition this way. How to use the memory. So we're going to set up the traction. Let's say 37.5, and then we're going to select the flexion, and we're going to put 11.2, and then we have 5 cycles, so that's a setup. Let's save it. So we're going to click Save, and we're going to save it on memory number 1. The 3 little bibs means that it has been saved. So now let's take everything off. So we're in flexion, we're going to take off what we did. We're going to go back in traction and take off what we did. Good. And now let's say that we start from fresh. We have a new patient and we want to use the same setup as before. We're going to go M1 and everything is back in, and we just start, and the table is going to perform the motion that have been saved for one time. So we have the flexion at 11.2 and the axial distraction at 37.5. That's how easy it is to save a setup. What is a function step that you have on the screen right here? Steps means basically that you're going to use an incremental movement to the table. So here we have a traction. Instead to go 37.5 directly, we're going to go less, go back, a little bit more, go back, a little bit more. And that's what that function does. So let's take a look. Just put it, come back, a little bit more, come back, a little bit more, and come back, and so on to reach the value 37.5. What is a check button? The check button allows you to start on the fly a new value. So if I go right here and I click check, immediately the table starts on flexion and on distraction, whatever I state. So I just check the flexion right here. If I go and I check it up, it comes back right where it was. So I want to check out a little bit more flexion. I want to see if the patient will tolerate it. So I put 16.8 and I just go check. Okay, the patient tolerates it, we keep it, and we go on a natural course of treatment. Then I click start, and then flexion and traction will work concomitantly. So you can use the whole time addressing only one thing, and here we're going to address the traction. So if I select flexion, the whole time will address the traction, we stay green. So whole time address the green button, not the yellow one. Whole time address the green button. I click the start button, and now the table will stay in flexion because it's locked. And once in flexion, it will hold it for 3 seconds before to perform another traction. Hold it 3 seconds. Go back. So the flexion is fixed, and there is a 3-second hold on the traction at the end of the traction. This is a foot pedal, and with the foot pedal on the floor, as I kick in, it's going to kick the drop up. I will select the drop from the screen. Now, in non-automatic, I have to step on the drop every time. Now, I can switch from non-automatic to automatic, either on the screen or by convenience on the table. And as I press that button, now I do not need to press on that pedal anymore. The drop comes back by itself. The advantages of that is basically you can use a repetitive drop without effort. Okay, you can trigger any drop from the screen. So we have 2 options for the drop. First, we have to select the drop. We can put it in non-automatic and in automatic. So let's start with the automatic section. So I put the drop very light, and if I click on the pelvis, you will see the automatic drop on the pelvis started. To turn it off, that's it. If I select the thoracic, it will do the same thing. If I select the cervical, it will do the same thing. Now, obviously, if I put tension on the drop, as I'm going to show you, and to put tension, I'm going to turn the button clockwise. Then the drop, I can use them as manual here, and you're going to see how it works. I select manual, and now I'm going to raise the pelvic drop. So, once it's manual, I'm going to use the foot command to raise the drop, the pelvic drop. If I select on the screen the thoracic drop, it will be exactly the same thing, and I just need to click to bring it up. Now there is another function which is very practical, is that green button here. If I press on the green button, suddenly the drop which were manual become automatic. And I do not need to use the foot function. If I click back, I take off the automatic and I need to use the foot function. The purpose of that is basically to use a high rate of drop for certain conditions, and we will see that later on. So the drop can be monitored from 3 areas: the screen, the foot, and the green button to switch between automatic and manual. There are different types of drops. We have the toggle recoil drop, like in the cervical, and we have what we call the sustained drop, like a pelvic drop. The thrusts are different. In the toggle recoil, the thrust does not reach the down section of the drop and stops before the arms recoil. So you go down, you don't go at the bottom, you recoil before. In a sustained drop, you go all the way down, you do not recoil. Those are the main difference between the toggle recoil and the sustained drop. The different type of drop and their equipment. So you have on the market what we call an axial drop, which is basically the most basic. You have an axe on the cephalad port, and basically the drop turn around that axe for a few angles, and it works this way. The problem with the axial drop, depending how the head of the patient is placed on the headpiece, the resistance will change. So it's really hard to set up. It's much harder. Then you have the plate drop, and plate drop do not work on an axe like we have on that table. It's a plate that raises up and goes down. And that's the most accurate drop because pretty much it doesn't change if the patient's head goes up or down. And we're going to see how it works. So you see the plate drop, the whole piece raised up. No, you don't have an axe here. And you can see it, the whole piece raised up and goes down. So that's typical of a plate drop. And then you have a plate drop like here with a cephalad translation, and some plate drop can straight down. So how do you evaluate the quality of a drop? That's important when you get a table because if you don't have a good quality of the drop, you may not be able to do what you want. So here we're going to go for the thoracic, and I'm going to raise the tongue. And a good drop, you will basically, let's release a bit of the tension here. You will use the same pressure in the middle, in the side, on the other side, and for the same pressure, the drop will go down. And you can test that by using the same weight and dropping at different part of the table, and the drop should go down. That's an excellent drop that has been fairly well tested. So the anterior sliding of the cervical piece that I just showed you is supposed to facilitate the separation, the distraction between two articular facets. And remember, on the upper cervical, what we used the toggle recall the most, it's where you have the most intimate relationship between two articular surfaces. So that anterior translation that we see on the cervical drop, as the headpiece drops down, you have a little separation that happens in the same time. So the toggle recall drop addresses mostly the upper cervical or light anatomical piece like the foot if you want to treat an extremity on the drop. The toggle does not work well on big anatomical piece such as the lumbar. It doesn't work very well. The sustained drop, which is the lumbar drop, work much better on big piece. And the most common is for the pelvis. Here you go. So what is the mechanism between the toggle recall? The mechanism is a vibration. It's a kind of sinusoidal wave that happens at the facet interface and that frees an adhesion that's located at that level. As an analogy of this mechanism, if you try to open a jar and the jar is well locked, and you jar of pickle, for example, and you have to force extremely hard to open it up, you could force and use a lot of strength, or you could be smarter and turn the jar and tap it on the counter. And after you tap it, you can open it with ease. And what it did, that tapping, creating a vibration at the interspace of the jar itself and the lid, created basically the possibility for you to open the jar by breaking the adhesion. So that's a little bit how a cervical drop. The mechanism behind a sustained drop, how does it work? Usually an anatomical piece is a little higher than the other, and you give a momentum to that piece basically, and you create a shearing between two pieces. That's pretty much how the sustained drop works. So to test if the drop is identical in its tension on the right side, on the left side, on the middle, we just took a weight here and we just that drop kicks fine here, fine here, fine here. And we basically establish the sensitivity of the drop with a mechanism as such. So that drop, you can press any place on the cephalad part of that pelvic piece and have the same type of intensity for the drop. One of the characteristics of the drop, which is noticeable and it's very valid to mention it, it's the fact that the drop is not jerky. You have an increased acceleration as the table cocks up. And that's important because if you have an acute patient, if there is a brisk sudden increase of the drop, it will hurt the patient. So this drop has been engineered to go up slower in such a way that you can treat an acute patient. And let's observe it together. So we're going to go down and observe as he goes back up. And that has been done on purpose for acute patient, and I have to say it works very well. One of the advantages of the automatic drop, it allows a faster tuning of the drop. Traditionally, it's a knob that you turn under the pelvic section to set the weight of the patient in relation to the drop. But most doctors do not take the time to do that, because it takes time. So basically they take their contact and they use their leg to assist the drop in dropping, with basically avoid them to tune the drop. So it's much more approximative. Now, with this type of table, if we go on automatic, see what it does. So by just turning the knob half a turn or a full turn, you stop the mechanism and the patient's weight is tuned exactly to the table. Much faster, much more efficient, and much more comfortable for the patient because you have just the right type of resistance. And I go.